Hello ladies and gentlemen, I got game 3 here between Reis, red Terran in the top left, versus Adelscott, protoss in the bottom right. Now Adelscott's been on the SC2 scene forever. I think he was back playing like the original beta tournaments from Wings of Liberty. I think the guy's pretty original on the whole Starcraft 2 scene, even some of the Starcraft 1. But he hasn't really been doing super well. He hasn't been doing super well against the Terran so far in these games. Let's see if these are his comments about that. Oh, no, it's about lagging. That would make sense. I'm not lagging. Dobby. That's pretty funny. It is fine for me. This is part of the Go for SC2 tournament show thing for money. The first two games we saw an engineering block both times out of the Terran player, and both times it didn't seem like the protoss had a good answer, taking a very awkward third base instead, and it really coming back to haunt him. So I would not be surprised if Reis tries for the same thing, though this is a massive map and obviously a 4-player one, so I don't know if he's going to be able to get there in time to make such a maneuver. It would be interesting even to go for maybe a Nexus first out of Adel. There hasn't been any really super fast pressure out of the Terran player, so going for some form of Nexus first might not have been a bad move. Instead we see as usual Gateway first, probably a Cybernetics core after the fact, whereas the Terran player knows that this is a massive map. He's going to go straight for a command center first on the low ground. Very risky against a Protoss or a Zerg who generally scout really early and can pressure your worker that is down here making your building. Barracks going down shortly afterwards. Speed it up slightly here at the beginning as these guys start feeling out what their builds are going to be. We do have a Cybernetics core up, so a very safe opening from Adelscott, but unfortunately that could leave him a little ways behind in economy here because of how quickly the expansion is up for the Terran player. Computer, no. Units tab. Terran is obviously behind at this standpoint because of the chrono boost that the Protoss player can use, but there's also a couple of supply taking up in this here Zealot and Stalker that are on the way out. Bunker is going to be going down almost immediately against an early Zealot Stalker pressure. You obviously want to be able to protect yourself against that. Two barracks coming down after the fact. I'm actually paying a lot of attention to these games myself for my playstyle. I've been having a lot of trouble with my Terran versus Protoss, particularly the 2-base Colossus push. It is very important to see it coming, to know that he has the Colossus tech, but it's also extremely difficult to stop sometimes because it's going to be attacking really early on. You need to have out really good Viking numbers or just an overwhelming army to deal with that kind of pressure. So I'm hoping to see that kind of play out of Adelscott, just to see how Reis is dealing with it, because he seems to be playing pretty good of the other two games we've watched to this point. Economy-wise, you'll see that the Terran is still behind the Protoss player, essentially just because of the chrono boost, but as he's producing more and more, and has himself the mule drops, he'll keep pretty good pace. A little surprised we haven't seen a third command center go down just yet. Is this guy going to do one? Nope, he's just going to put the supply depot over here to scout for any kind of blink play. Which that might be what we see out of Adelscott. He has really been trying for that blink play. Game 2, he did try to use that. Not a very good effect, unfortunately. Double gas on this side. Double gas on this side. Hasn't gone for the gas super fast down here, and is looking like he's going to try to wall off his front a little bit. Just a handful of Marines. Going to try to... oh, not again. Adelscott seems to be having really big trouble keeping his vision on his units. That's why I always encourage people that I am helping to learn to be better to keep your attacking units on a hotkey. He sees his army is on hotkey 1. But if he had his stalker over here on a hotkey, what's really important about that is it allows you to say, oh, it's under attack, click 1, and then click back towards your base, so that way you will generally not lose your important units out front. 3 stalkers is enough to really push back a lot of Terran harassment. These 7 Marines, I don't think you're going to get a lot done, unfortunately, because of that. Stimpack on the way, still building more workers, both of them are. Factory, 3 barracks. Pretty straightforward and standard once again out of Reis. And that seems to be his mentality for these games. It's just to play as standard and straightforward as possible. Scouting for any type of proxy buildings, third bases. Interestingly, you see the Terrans have not been too afraid. You don't see engineering bays going down to put missile turrets in the back of the bases to look for any Oracle play. And that could have very easily happened. We do see a scan out of the Terran just to try to see more of what's going on. Lots of defensive stalkers at home to deal with any type of drop play. Spread out evenly across the base. So Adelscott looks somewhat afraid of what could be coming at him. Nothing but lots of Marines coming out from our Terran player. First Marauder on the way. Does have the third command center started. We should be swapping over a starport onto our factory to start producing medevacs. I'm sure what Reis was looking for was any type of Colossus tech. You can kind of hide Colossus tech, but not really. The unfortunate thing is that the stim pack will be finished, but there won't be any medevacs here to really support that that stim usage. So the damage happening to Reis's units is also somewhat supply blocked. The damage that's going to happen to his units could be fairly severe if he's not careful. The Protoss player has no upgrades, even in pursuit. We have +1 about to finish for our Terran player, and he does scout this army down here. Sees the very heavy stalker composition, automatically pulls out the SCVs to be able to prepare the bunker for an attack. No sentries in this army, so there's not going to be any type of shield going down, any type of force fields. The stim was of the units inside of the bunker. You can stim units inside of bunkers. Not the best time warp. It's going to get a lot of the units up there. Trying to use his blink micro at the front here, but now that stim is finished, he's going to push out to try to... Ooh, maybe not. I'm surprised we haven't had an aggressive blink forward at this point. This looks to be a fairly effective attack out of the Protoss player here, even though his supply is a little bit behind the Terran. Good micro, keeping a lot of his wounded stalkers in the back, losing very, very few there. Once again, you see that the stim is actually doing a lot of damage to this Terran army. He's only got 2 medevacs, 3 medevacs in here now to try to deal with that. I don't know what was so important about killing off the missile turrets. That's obviously just there for the Terran to make sure that Dark Templars don't catch him off guard. But there isn't any Dark Templar attack or anything on the way on this side. There is blink from the Protoss, so they see the Terran hovering near the ramp, just to make sure that there isn't a blink into the base. A blink into the base could potentially be fatal for Adelscott, because once his blink is in cooldown, he could end up losing a lot of units to some sort of aggressive blink play. Accidental lift up there from Reis. He could go for a counter drop, but right now he needs as much of his units as possible. Did kill off that tech lab, but it's not that big of a deal, particularly because stim pack is already finished. Great time warp once again on the ramp. Doing a lot of damage. A lot of Terran units in the back aren't getting any damage done. He has to pull out his SCVs to help deal with this here. Still a pretty big supply lead right now for Adelscott. If you look at the units killed, he's killed 17 workers. He is going to have to lift off and go home. Looks pretty rough right now for Reis. Good pressure attack here from Adelscott. And this is the kind of thing I run into a lot as a Terran player. You think you've got like this big kick-ass army, and then the Protoss player still somehow manhandles you. It's quite frustrating at times. Waiting to get his army back up and together. He really doesn't have very much Marauders, so it's not going to help him out a lot. Get a little bit of damage in on that one stalker there. Thing is, oh, well, we just have one Marine over here. Adelscott's in a great position. He can expand just fine. The Terran player can't really do much of anything. He's got 3 command centers here, and he can't mine out of any of them. Oh, out of the other 2. Trying to do some cutesy blink micro. It's working pretty good right now, but he's not killing too many units because of the mass amount of medevacs back here to heal up. These workers are going to go back in there. If we look at the units tab, pretty sick lead for the Protoss player. Xane loses 1 stalker there. These stalkers are still 0-0 though. The Terran army is 1-1. Don't think he can really afford to be able to get out 2-2. Does he have an armory up yet? Doesn't appear so. Starting to have enough army to maybe push down now. Looked like Reis was going to try to sneak his command center back down. Another time warp. Is he going to blink up? I think that'd be a bad move. No, he is not. This base is starting to get units pushed off to it. More gateways coming down. Very hard for me to think how Reis is going to come out of this. If he crushes this army, he might be in a great spot because the tech of Adelscott has not been moving up. He's not moving into Colossus or anything else. These time warps are really frustrating right now. He is going to have to find a way to get down there. I would suggest maybe dropping some army down here and maybe trying to flank. But the problem is with that blink is that the Protoss player could always just... Yeah, it looks like Reis has to come down now and attack. These stalkers are trapped, so he either has to kill this army or... Because he can't run away now. His blink's going to only run him into a corner. These medevacs are keeping a lot of the army alive for the Terran player. Tries to blink out of there. It's going to cost him a few units. So you see Reis actually takes a bit of supply lead right now. Just knocked those stalkers out in time before that pylon went down. He doesn't want to lose too many medevacs. That's really been tipping the tide for him in this battle. And unfortunately, he can't actually afford to move out just yet because these blink stalkers could just circumvent his army. Then he'd be in a lot of trouble. Looks like he's going to try to pick off a couple of medevacs and blink away. Smart play. I see this a lot out of Liquid Hero. Loves doing the medevac pick off and jump. That's the problem with having your medevacs too far ahead in your army. Surprisingly, no zealots and still no upgrades out of the Protoss player. Starting to get a few units out here. It looks as though the Terran has to go and try to put some damage on the Protoss. He's just got too big of a lead. As you can see, the Terran player hasn't even been building any SCVs up to this point. Zealots are going down, but they will get mowed through fairly quickly. Small little chunk of army here from Reis is catching the Protoss quite off guard. He doesn't have any army rallied back to his main. Oh, computer. Yeah, computer. There isn't much at home once again. Adelscott has not been teching up behind this. Reis has got to be careful, making sure his units don't get rallied to their death. Trying to keep some units there at the front. No Colossus, no Storm Tech, no Dark Templars. There's nothing at home really. There's not even any starports. Nothing really for Adelscott to deflect this army with. So once again, we see a little bit of lack of foresight from him here. Only one sentry there. It's not going to do very good. It dies almost immediately. These upgrades for the Terran have really made a big difference in this. I've never seen a Protoss this reluctant to tech. This is really surprising. Just shows a little bit of a lack of finesse here out of Adelscott to not be working on any upgrades behind this. I'm pretty sure he thought he had this game in the bag. I mean, the Terran army's pretty beat up, but these stalkers are just too weak. This next army is going to catch those guys completely off guard. He's going to try and hunt down this army, but he probably doesn't even need to. Look at the supply lead now for Reis here. There's nothing Adelscott can really do. And if you look, Reis has done this pretty much off of just one base. He did get this base up and going, but for the most part, he's been on one base for a large portion of this game. Adelscott's trying to do some sort of cute stalker micro. Yeah, this was another kind of a stomping here at the end. I mean, Adelscott did try to do some cute stuff, but you needed storms, you needed Colossus, you needed something. This was kind of a clinic here by Reis. I think that he kind of wiped the floor with this Protoss player. Anyways, all three games went to Reis. That was the entire series. So I don't know which stage of the Go for SC2 Cup this was, but as you can tell, Reis is moving on. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.